everybody, it's Jo Perrott, founder of the Ladies Working Dog Group. Are you feeling stuck with your Gundog training? Trust me, you're not alone, and that's exactly why you need to be here. Every week, we're bringing you the best tips and hacks to make training your Gundog easy peasy. We'll keep it straightforward, no fuss, just actionable guidance that you can put straight to use. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of Founded Fetched. This week we'll be talking all about choosing between a whistle and a voice when training your Gundog. Joining me for this week's podcast is LWDG Group expert Claire Denyer. How are you today, Claire?
Hello, Jo. I'm very good, thank you. I am just recovering from our LWDG Foundation training weekend, which was phenomenal and amazing. Still buzzing from watching all the ladies and their dogs do so amazingly well over the weekend. But yes, so I'm absolutely great and I'm excited to be doing another podcast. How are you?
I'm really buzzing from the weekend, even though I wasn't there, because you sent me loads of photos and videos. The video for everybody like saying hello, Jo, brought me to tears. And I just think it's so amazing. What we do is amazing. But when we bring people together in a holiday scenario or a group learning scenario, they make massively strong friendships, don't they?
They do. By the end of the weekend, some of these ladies obviously have maybe seen each other online on our live Q&As or through the Facebook group, but most of them, I don't think any of them knew each other personally on a one-to-one basis. But by the end of the weekend, they were all so well bonded and so supportive of one another, and they were literally cheering each other on all weekend as the dogs and the owners were making progress. And on day one, in the first 2 hours, one of the ladies there achieved her goal for the weekend in the first 2 hours. And literally everyone was like cheering her on, and I said, okay, we need a new goal now because you can't stop now. So because like I say, these ladies formed really strong friendships, and we found that last year with the holidays last year, the ladies grew really strong friendships through the training weekends.
And we've still got another 2 to go with you, maybe 3. We've got one with them. So there's loads still to come this year, isn't there?
We've got so much going on. So we've got Sam Scurry training day. We have got Gem's Spaniel training weekend, and we've got at the end of May the advanced weekend with me, John and Gem. And then in September, we're doing a novice. And yes, it looks very likely that we're putting on a second novice weekend because the call for that has been so huge. And because the ladies that were at the foundation one this gone weekend, they were all like, do you think we'll be ready to do novice like in September? And obviously the September one's already sold out with a waiting list. So I was like, John, I think we might have to do another one. So we looked through the diary and was like, yeah, we can squeeze another one in.
Obviously that isn't what our podcast is about today, but
no.
We're talking to our members. So last week, I think it was on Instagram, we put up this fun thing, like a community question, where we basically said, if you could only take 2 things with you training, what would they be? And we expected comments, but there were so many comments that said whistle and treats. And we were like, me and you discussed it a little bit, and some of the other members, and it's like, how many people think the whistle is probably like an essential? And whilst we both agree that whistles are incredibly amazing tools, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about like the differences, the fundamentals between using a whistle and using a voice. Because for me, if I didn't have my whistle, it wouldn't be the end of the world. I would give verbal cues. Is it a case of we are relying on one more than the other? Or is it a case of maybe we're not training both to the same level?
It's really interesting because, yes, so many people did say that in a response. They said whistle and treats, or whistle and lead, or whistle and... The whistle was a really big one right up there, wasn't it? And for me, the whistle is a secondary thing. Now, obviously, when you're handling your dog at distance, the whistle is an easier communication to the dog than your voice. But If you went out without your whistle or you lost your whistle whilst you were out with your dog, you have to have voice. You have to have that, because it happens, like lanyard, snap, break, maybe you just forget to take it out with you that day. So for me, a whistle is important for handling at distance, for giving the dog cues at distance, so commands at distance, like stop whistle or a hump whistle and things like that. But my voice is actually more important, and the whistle is great for that distance, but if the wind was blowing the wrong way, the whistle might get lost. Even that, you know, that can happen. So the dog might be watching your body language. So is the whistle everything that it's made out to be? So if you go on a walk and you're doing like a bit of practicing your gun dog training, and somebody, Joe Public, might see you and go, oh, that was amazing. Should I get a whistle? As if it's the whistle that's trained the dog rather than the training that has trained the dog. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I put on there like a tennis ball and some poo bags, because to me, I need poo bags for the obvious reasons. But to me, a tennis ball pretty much means that I can do anything. And if I'm going for a walk where it's not a training walk, I'll normally shove a tennis ball in my pocket so that I can make a walk a training walk. I didn't see pretty much the word dummy, and I was thinking, what are we whistling and rewarding for? Because if I know it was like a theoretical question, but it fascinated me. And you know me and my love for anything to do with like how humans think. But it absolutely fascinated me that the whistle was there before a dummy.
Yeah, and that the whistle is relied on just that much, because let's face it, how often when you go out for a walk with your dog, do you let your dog get that far away from you that you couldn't just recall them on the voice, or you couldn't just communicate with them with your voice and a bit of body language? Unless you're sending your dog out on a super long retrieve, your voice should be enough, actually, because your dog's not going to be that far away from you.
Absolutely. And if I'm walking like just a normal walk, I will take my whistle, I'll put it around my neck out of habit more than anything. But I won't use that whistle very rarely on just like a normal walk. I'll have it with me that I think, okay, if anything, if for some reason they hit up a rabbit and for some reason the two of them took off, that I would have that extra strong reinforcement of back here, please. But otherwise, I do pretty much everything off my voice. Now, I don't know, I was probably trained that way by my dad without even realizing, because he'd go out with a lot of them and everything would be by name. You can recall 15 of them at you, but if you only want one of them at you, you're using a name. So I'm just wondering whether when we become, in our minds, we're going to become gun dog trainers, do we stop using our voice or losing the understanding of how powerful our voice can be as a training aid?
So this is the thing, the voice is so super powerful, because with a whistle, especially the new Acme whistles where you can't blow them really hard because then they don't work. But when you use your voice, you use your tone of voice to communicate to your dog if you're happy with something or if you're not so happy with something. So what you just said then about your dog chasing something, you could do that still with your voice. Leave that, whatever your thing is, whether it's an at or leave that. And I was trying to think, when we said we were going to do this topic, I was trying to think if there's any commands that I use with my dogs on a whistle that I don't have a verbal for, and there isn't. I have a verbal stop whistle, which is stop. So that's that. I have a verbal turn, which is this way. I have a verbal recall, which is come. A verbal hunt, which is find it. So there's nothing that we are doing with a whistle that we can't do with a voice. And actually, when I'm working with beginner clients and their dogs have not been introduced to a whistle, we always teach the verbal command first, and then we put the whistle in, for exactly the reason that if they forget their whistle or their dog's close, they're going to be using the verbal, not the whistle. So it doesn't make sense for the whistle to be the primary thing that you're communicating to your dog with. Obviously, then, as a side note to that, if you're getting into working tests, Everyone's using a whistle then, because hollering at your dog across the field isn't done. But that's a different scenario to what we're talking about. We're talking about every day out with your dog. What's the most important thing? So for me, actually, the voice is the most important thing, because that's the thing where my tone of voice, the pitch of my voice, is the thing that really communicates to the dog whether what they're doing is right or wrong and what I need.
For me, I've got to be honest, my preferred way of communicating is my voice, and I probably back it up with body language. If I'm asking for a left or a right, and then they should be looking at me for my next body cue. Now, I always laugh with everybody, and I wish I'd kept a video of it, but like Dad used to do this sort of crazy dance where he'd be like almost jumping up and down and doing like an old man's dance in a disco. So the dog was always having to watch and guess where he was going to have to go. He couldn't overread it, because just because my father's hand was moving to the left doesn't mean he wanted him to go to the left. So I like to use my body, and I like the dog to be watching me for what my next command is, because I almost think a little bit is the dog's not waiting to hear something, is it?
No, this is the thing. I think we have to remember, we really have to remember that dogs are far more visual. They're taking far more notice of our body language than they're taking over what's coming out of our mouth. So an example about this, we talked about this at the weekend, actually. John was saying about the importance of your body language and your body posture when you're training your dog, and how the dogs are reading that. Because what you'll find is, if you were training the dog, and let's just say you were giving a direction of a left or a right, and you put the relevant arm out for that left or right signal, but you said the wrong word. I personally don't have a different word for left or right. Some people don't, I don't, because of what we're talking about, because the dog is reading my body language. If you said the wrong word, so if you did have a left and a right, but you got that muddled, but your body language was correct, the dog would follow the body language, not the voice. They would follow the body language. Just like the dogs, they follow where you're looking. So if you look to the left, the dog will look to the left. They take all of that in, and that should never be taken for granted or not thought through, because the dogs are so aware of our body language, our body posture, what we're saying with our body, far more so than what comes out of our mouth.
What do you think are the challenges faced? Like, for some people, they've got a whistle, and again, you don't know what you don't know. You've only trained with the whistle. You haven't thought about the other things that we're chatting about now. What are the challenges faced by somebody who has only trained whistle or only trained voice?
The disadvantages to only training with the whistle is, are you going to use your whistle around the house? If your dog lives in the home with you, you're probably not going to use your whistle around the house, or even in the back garden, come to that. That's a big disadvantage, because you're going to maybe not want to be blowing your whistle and walking around your house or around your garden, or even when the dog's in super close proximity to you. It seems a little bit overkill, doesn't it? And also remember, the purpose of the whistle really is to be able to communicate with the dog at distance. So if you're overusing it, then I suppose you may run the risk of, like, the dogs get a bit bored of our voice, of the dog being, oh, it's the whistle again, oh, it's the whistle again. Equally, if you only train with the voice and you don't introduce the whistle, you are going to be slightly at a disadvantage if the wind is really against you, because the voice doesn't carry as well in those conditions as the whistle. So there's definitely disadvantages both ways, but it's just practical as well. It's what's practical. Like, when I've let my dog out in the garden, I don't want to have to be wearing my whistle around my neck if I've just eaten my dinner, because that would have fallen in my dinner, which is not great. But then when I go out to the garden, I don't want to have to be looking for my whistle just to get my dogs in from the garden. I want to be able to go out in the garden and say, Rose, come, or whoever I'm talking to. So it's thinking about it as the whole package, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think as well, some of the times we may struggle is not a reliance on the whistle, that's not fair, but our voice communicates tone and how we are feeling very quickly.
Yes.
So saying a name, I don't know, saying Rex when you're like really calm, Rex, or Rex, or whatever it is, you can tell tiny nuances on what I'm saying tells them how you feel. Whereas I find myself, sometimes you can blow a whistle and you don't even realize you've blown it a little bit more than you thought you did. But it can almost sound quite aggressive, and you might not have meant it in an aggressive manner. But I find it harder, and maybe that's just me, but I find it really hard to get those subtleties in what I'm trying to tell the dog.
Yeah, 100%. I really agree with you. And this is, I think we've talked about this on another podcast or maybe on a live Q&A, I'm not sure. But things like, let's just say the dog's ignored the stop whistle and the handler goes out to hopefully appropriately correct the dog. They're not going to hopefully be doing anything harsh. But then they like blast the stop whistle in the dog's face. And I'm like, why would you even? The dog's like right there. How is that going to aid the dog's learning? It's not going to aid the dog's learning. That's just a human response. That's an angry response to blast that stop whistle like that when the dog's like right in front of you. I sit the dog up, walk out to the dog, put the slip lead on if I need to move them back to where the dog maybe ignored the stop whistle in training, sit the dog up calmly, stand in front of the dog, raise my hand, and I just blow that pip, just pip, like that. Because that's just reminding the dog, you have to stop when you hear the sound. But if I was to like go, okay, that's a really bad example of what a whistle sounds like, Joe. Why get angry and blast that whistle in the dog's face? You're not actually achieving anything by doing that. So you're completely right. I really need to blow my whistle for real next time we talk about whistle blowing on a podcast, because that sounded more like a foghorn.
No, like you just said, you wouldn't go up to the dog and scream in his face. You wouldn't do that because you know that sounds wrong. Whereas I think with a whistle, it's sometimes easier to put a lot of force behind it, thinking that's the way you've got to do it, when for the dog, it's probably far worse than you shouting, sit in their face.
Yeah. The thing is, it's very easy to create a negative association with the stop whistle. So blasting in your dog's face is going to achieve that very quickly. It's not necessarily, and yes, it's easy. I think it's easy to do. People can get really angry. You can imagine they've almost got teeth marks in their whistle where they're gritting their teeth as they're doing it.
So I think as well, like you say, with teeth marks, etc. I don't know about you, whilst I don't mind the whistle being in my mouth, I don't constantly want it there. And I know that if you are trialing and testing things, you get far more used to it constantly being in your mouth. But for me, I find it, gotta be honest, a bit of a faff.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I take my dogs out for a walk, I have the whistle around my neck just through habit. But if the dog's close enough, I'm using the voice. I'm not walking around on a walk with the whistle sitting in my mouth. If I'm doing a training exercise, so this is the other thing, if you're doing a training exercise and you put the whistle in your mouth prematurely and the dog sees that, they're going to preempt what you're doing anyway. So you're not going to get the right result necessarily in that scenario. So no, you want your whistle to be handy. Unless you walk around with it in your mouth all the time, the dog's going to spot that, and that's going to become a precursor to, oh, they're going to stop me in a minute. So then you might see stickiness in the dog on the next retrieve because they're thinking they're going to stop me in a minute. So there's a lot of things where actually overuse of the whistle can be a negative thing.
Yeah, and like from a human perspective, if you wander around for long periods of time with a whistle in the mouth, any dentist will tell you that will affect your teeth. It will affect how you sound because it's a little bit like a baby with a dummy. There's something changing your mouth's position. I'm not saying if you use a whistle, you're going to need a brace because it's not at all. But being able to say to yourself, okay, what exercise am I doing? How am I giving them those cues? Being more intelligent in our thinking of going, okay, will these be given as verbal cues? Will these be given as body cues? Because the more things you practice, the far better trained your dog is going to be.
The thing is, I 100% agree with you. And I think this comes down to, I think in my head, it's all about the relationship with the dog. The whistle isn't the relationship, the tone of voice, the body language, the reading the little nuances in your facial expressions, and the dog learning and bonding with you and seeing those things and learning what they mean creates a much deeper in my opinion, a much deeper relationship with the dog, built on that trust between dog and handler. The whistle has its place in the training and its need in the training, especially if you're trialing, doing working tests, working your dog at distance. Of course it does. But actually, to build that relationship with your dog, it's far more effective to do that using your voice, your body language, your facial expressions, and to build engagement with the dog through personal touches, which is what your voice is. When I'm praising my dog, I want my dog to understand that this tone of my voice means I'm really super happy with you. And if I just drop it a tad, so I might embarrass myself here, but when I'm praising my dogs, it's a good girl. If I then give a verbal correction, like the tone is very different, the dog understands that, but there's no raised voice, there's no blasting whistles at the dog. If you get into a habit of raising your voice, of shouting and blasting whistles, that's what it's going to take to communicate to your dog when they're getting it wrong. You're not going to be able to just discreetly go, because they're going to need far more than that, because that's what you have trained them to need.
And this goes back as well to what you just said in there, which is also about praise. A lot of people say, oh, I have to take treats. Now, again, I'm not knocking treats. I take treats with me everywhere. But we've got to get the dog to not expect a type of reward. The treat is not always going to be food. The treat is not always going to be touch. The treat is not always going to be voice. It's that mixture that builds the bond, isn't it?
100%. So the thing is, we know that when we're teaching a puppy or a very novice dog a new skill set, it's very often food is a very easy way of showing the dog through guiding and luring what it is we want. But if we rely on that food for too long, the dog is working for the food, not for the handler. So we have to get to a point where once the dog's learnt the thing, we've shown them and they understand it, we have to get to a point where you can start to phase out those treats to a point where you're quite happy that the dog is working for you. What I always say to handlers, if your dog prefers verbal praise over physical or physical over praise, get that bit in first before you give the food. So the dog gets used to the verbal praise or the physical praise being the precursor to the food, which they might really value, but you want the dog working for you, not the food. Then I'll move on to an intermittent schedule with the food reward. Again, it will be paired with that verbal or physical praise, but it comes sporadically so that the dog isn't expecting it this often and so only working for it. The dog's brain works a little bit like a gambler. So once you move to that intermittent schedule, the dog will be going, it might be coming now, it might be coming now, but you will have already got to the point where the dog really values the verbal praise or the physical praise because you put that in before the food. So then you might be able to go, good girl or good boy, and the dog go, oh, like that, and that feels good because previously you've done that and then given the food. But you might now be able to do that 2 or 3 times and the dog go, oh, you're really happy with me. And then you give the food if you want to continue using food. The thing is, you don't want to ever stop rewarding the dog, but the reward shouldn't be reliant on food. I think I've explained that thoroughly enough.
Yeah, and I can remember in university when I was studying psychology and they were explaining, like everybody's heard of like Pavlov's, how they taught the dogs and the dogs salivated on a bell, etc. But when we looked at that more in the class and we were talking about it, I can remember our tutor saying to us, it's like things like opening a bar of chocolate. You get as excited opening, you haven't even ate the chocolate yet, so you haven't even got to the point of the reward, even like opening the wrapper, the smell, all those things that are connected with something can have as much of a reward, a pleasure reward within us as the thing itself. So it's what you're saying there. If you've got that like verbal praise, that touch, and then the food, all those things become as equally exciting to the dog.
Yes, they all become a reward, all of them. Now, some dogs will have a preference on whether they prefer the physical or the voice. But we can, if we're careful with our timing and careful with how we do it, we can get dogs that even aren't really keen on physical touch to quite enjoy it by them pairing it with the food. So it's you get the physical touch, you get the food, you get the physical touch, you get the food. That dog may never value that physical touch as much as the food, but you're going to get it to enjoy it more. I use my voice so much in training for getting engagement with my dogs. We were actually doing this at the weekend with the ladies. I was talking to them about what engagement is. And so while we're on the subject of food, I was explaining to a couple of ladies who had been told to scatter food on the field, like to give their dogs enrichment. And I said the issue with that is your dog is not engaging with you, it's engaging with the floor. So they're trying to get eye contact, but the dog is hearing the praise and then looking at the floor. And when you saw the penny drop, it was like, oh, I can now see what's happening. So then we went to giving the praise and the handler giving the food. Look at me giving the food, look at me. Now, within no time at all, these dogs were no longer nose on the ground. They were head up. They were engaged with the handler. They were like, when are you providing the goods rather than the floor providing the goods? So you've got to be so careful with these things. You've got to be so mindful of what the outcome's going to be. So if you're trying to get your dog to engage with you more, and you're then putting the reward in the ground, that's not engagement with you. That's not engagement with you. So it's being mindful. And the same goes with everything we're talking about, the whistle. It's thinking about what's the dog getting from this? What is the dog learning? And what we should be creating is dogs that have really strong, powerful bonds with their handlers, and want to work for the handler in partnership with the handler. And so it's looking at, well, what's the best way to create that and develop that?
Some of the other things that people said, which I thought were fabulous, were things like, and I thought they were brilliant things to write, things like a sense of humour.
That was mine. I said that. I said a dog and a sense of humour.
And things like patience. And these are, again, they're great things, aren't they? Because all these bits that we're talking about, they all add up to a rounded owner/trainer. You need to have this tool belt, shall we say, that is built in your own mind, is built in equipment, is built in behavior. All those things coming together is what gives you the outcome you want.
100%. Look, listen, the thing is, if owners want to really achieve goals with their dogs, getting that engagement, getting that relationship going is so super important. All the things we've talked about, the tone of voice, all of those sort of things are all part and parcel of that. And a sense of humour is part of that. You've got to, if the moment your dog makes a mistake, your attitude is, oh, stupid dog, why did you do that? Or, oh, my training's rubbish, I haven't done it. You're going to be giving off a really negative vibe. Your dog's going to massively pick up on that. You're going to then feel a bit rubbish yourself as well because you feel down. Instead, it's much better to go, oops, that didn't go so well, did it? And think, how can I reset that exercise and set my dog up for success? Have a bit of a sense of humour about it and go, oh, I maybe didn't think that bit through very well. So having a sense of humour when you're training your dog, rather than getting frustrated or feeling like the dog's doing it to spite you, or they're stupid, or they're not doing it right, or whatever it is, it's much better to have a sense of humour, accept that something went wrong and reset so that the dog can then get it right, and that you and your dog don't fall out. Like I say to people sometimes when I'm working with them, if something's gone wrong and I can see that the owner feels really disheartened, I say to them, do this. I'll like give them something to do to fix the problem. And then I'll say to them, now go make up with your dog. Make up with your dog. Give them a kiss. Tell them you love them. Because I don't want people to hold on to what's gone wrong. I want them to recognize what's gone right. And this is the thing. We don't want to be reliant on food. We don't want to be reliant on tools to get, and when I say tools, I mean like things like whistles and leads and long lines. We want to have progress with the dog through relationship and engagement. And if we're always giving ourselves or the dogs a hard time when things go wrong, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always amazed when you look at like farmers and things, and they're like, they work with their sheepdogs. Okay, at certain points they use whistles because the dog's literally miles away. But their connection with it, like they jump in the tractor, the dog jumps in the tractor. They are driving the jeep, the dog is on the back. They don't. You very rarely see them reach for a lead. It's just that connection that says, "Me and you are going everywhere together today."
Yeah, that's relationship based on engagement through clear rules and boundaries, through giving clarity to the dog. All of this is part of it, and this is where the training system has gone so wrong over the last however many years, because people have become reliant on things instead of working on relationship.
Somebody wrote, which made me laugh, a lanyard and a spare lanyard. That's very good, but you also, if you're taking the lanyard, you might as well take the whistle.
Yeah, you might need a whistle on the end of the lanyard for sure.
Somebody else wrote about one of the things they take is their sanity, and that made me laugh as well, because I was just like, yeah, very true. Because as we're talking about all this, like you just said, it's very easy. You can listen to this podcast two ways. You can listen and laugh with us and think, okay, yeah, that they made some really great points about like how I could use different things in to make sure that I'm using everything to my advantage. Or you could potentially be thinking, oh my God, I've got this wrong. But the reality is nobody's got anything wrong, because we don't know what we don't know, do we? It's when somebody tells us something different that we go, okay, what do I think with that information? Is that something that I want to take on board?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I think the problem is, in one way, the internet is so incredible because it's so easy to get information. But the downside of that is it's so easy to get the wrong information and to be sold on something that isn't true or doesn't really work or has limitations. And I think this was one of the things over the weekend, like speaking to the ladies and bringing out the reality of what was really happening. So a little example, one of the ladies had been using a retrieving aid with her reluctant retriever who wasn't retrieving. But this specific retrieving aid, when you threw it, the dog went out to it and it opened, and the dog then rewarded itself by eating from inside it. But then, as far as the dog was concerned, job done. That's it. So then he was like, now I'm interested in the environment. Where can I go now? Not at the home, the dog would then return the thing for the game to be started again. But here in a new environment or anywhere other than the garden, the dog was like, I've self-rewarded for running out to the thing. Now I'm going to go and do my own thing. Thank you very much for that. So when I explained what was going on in the dog's head, and we changed to a completely different way of teaching the dog the retrieve, I'm telling you now, that dog was doing absolutely beautiful retrieves to hand after that, because the reward was happening from the owner, not from the thing out there. It was happening back at the owner. And it was just a light bulb moment. And all of a sudden, the dog was like giving her something she had not been able to achieve, which was engagement with her and eye contact with her, instead of looking at the ground and looking around to see what else there was to do. It was incredible. It was incredible.
Just wrap up this, because you and I, bless us, and poor people who have to listen to us, I think we listen on our walk, they end up doing marathons by the time me and you have finished yabbering. But the reality of it, to wrap this up, what sort of top tips would you give people? They've got their whistle, they've got their dog. What would you think are your top tips of how they can instantly start improving what they do?
Okay. So try not to become reliant on any tool of any type. Think the reliability needs to come from you and your relationship with the dog. Think about your tone of voice and your body language and how your dog responds to those things. And then keep things like your whistles for your long distance work and for when you need to use them, rather than thinking of them as the reason your dog does the thing. My biggest tip is you want your dog to be doing the thing because it values the relationship with you, not because of a other thing.
That's a fantastic top tip to end with. And no doubt will be a quote somewhere on the LWDG before we know it. Thank you very much. Thank Thank you very much for your time today, Claire. Thank you to our listeners for listening in with us, being part of it. Please, if you can, review us on whatever podcast player you're on. So many of you listen to us, but we want to get to so many more so that we can help people, male or female, with their dog training. The one fantastic thing about our podcast is that it is for everyone. So regardless of whether you are a LWDG member or not, you can make use of this fabulous podcast. I hope you've all enjoyed. Please let us know. Please send us emails. Please send us comments on our Instagram and on our Facebook. And we look forward to speaking to you all next week. That's it for today's episode. A massive thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to head over to the LWDG and sign up for our membership. Get access to expert-led training, a wonderfully supportive community, and the resources you need to become a confident and skilled gun dog trainer. Let's take this journey together, because no woman should have to train her gun dog alone. We'll see you all next week.